Many years ago, I was in the 5th grade, somewhere around there, in what was called elementary school. That is where you learn the elements of your education, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now, with what is called social promotion, or No Child Left Behind, a kid doesn't have to know those elements in order to move on, and that would be a disaster if it weren't for smartphones, iPads, and Google and the like, which allow children to get along famously, even though they don't know their elements. Times change is all I can say. We move on. Anyway, one day I came home from school, and there was some dead time before we would be eating dinner, so I turned on our television, which was still something of a breathtaking novelty back then, this piece of furniture which showed things and could talk. There were usually some westerns on, Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy, the Cisco Kid, or maybe the Mickey Mouse Club, something that would entertain me until supper time. But on this day there was something new and unexpected on, and I stayed with it, and I was riveted to it, trying to figure it out, never having seen anything quite like it before. When it was over, immediately our telephone rang. My mother answered it and said it was a call for me. That was also very unusual. No one ever called me up on the phone. I took the receiver from my mother and said hello, and the person on the other end shouted, "Did you see that?" I knew right away that he was a friend of mine, and I knew exactly what it was he was talking about and what had him so excited. It was that show on TV, Rocky and Bullwinkle, the moose and the squirrel. I would be watching them faithfully for quite some time, until I got bored and turned to something else, or they ran out of gas. I don't know which came first. But at the time, they and the rest of the show had my undivided attention. They were, as Monty Python would one day have it, some years later, something completely different. Chuck Jones was not that big a fan of the show. He got it, but he didn't like it. And it is true, I think, that the animation is decidedly, even deliberately, inferior, clunky. But JayWard and Bill Scott had moved into a new territory, clearly distinct from what Jones and Warner Brothers were doing. Chuck Jones was making, really, silent movies. In some cases that was literally true. There would be no dialogue as with the Coyote and the Roadrunner, if you accept the occasional beep beep and the sound effects. In others, the dialogue was minimal. If you turned off the sound on the television, you could still follow the action. You could understand the cartoon. The animation, the drawing, the expressions on the faces of the characters, their reactions told you everything you needed to know. Adding the voice of Mel Blanc saying, "What a maroon!" gave an extra kick to the humor, but Jones would screen everything he made without sound, making sure every laugh was in there. Rocky and Bullwinkle was a talking picture. One of the main characters in the show was the voluble narrator. The drawing was clumsy, but that was a kind of joke in itself. What you heard was silly and nonsensical, unexpected, and hilarious. And it only got better. In addition to Moose and Squirrel, there was Boris and Natasha in a sort of backhanded Cold War parody, just as I was becoming aware of such a thing, both the Cold War and parody. No, the show had a level of reality not present with Bugs and Daffy. It was a real boot in the pants. Then there were the fractured fairy tales, again taking what was familiar and turning it ass over tea kettle. And once again the narrator was a star, in this case Edward Everett Horton, whoever he was. I didn't know, but I loved him. And there was also Mr. Peabody and his boy, Sherman, in their Wayback Machine, always a good time, and Dudley Do-Right striving to save Nell and the world from the clutches of the dastardly Snidely Whiplash. I could live without Dudley or Snidely, and even Rocky. I think they changed the name of the show after a while to Bullwinkle and Friends, and Bullwinkle had a poetry corner and a magic act that never worked, and it all came from Frostbite Falls, an introduction to Minnesota a very long time before Lake Wobegon. And I have a hunch that Matt Groening was watching too, because his Simpsons came right out of this mindset, starring a family of zany humans, not goofy animals. Animation is very big stuff right now. At the top, all the top movies owned by Disney Studios are either completely animated or driven by computer-generated special effects. But I come from a time when the wonders were supplied by Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, and for a short but thoroughly enjoyable period, Rocky and Bullwinkle.